All right, Steve, welcome to Hard Lens Media. So glad to have you on the show. I think it's very important for our viewers and subscribers, in case they're not familiar with your work, can you please give us a background to who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and the organizations that you're part of?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. First of all, thanks for having me on, Kit.
No
My
problem.
name is Steve Poikonen. I host a show called Slow News Day. I go way outside the official narratives and try and bring people together in a post-partisan conversation. I also co-host the Free Assange Vigil series, which has taken place every week for the last 43 weeks. The premise behind that is to keep people awake, aware, and engaged during all of the distractions that we have about the fact that Julian Assange is an Australian citizen who's facing 175 years in a U.S. supermax for violating the U.S. Espionage Act for releasing war crimes and corporate crimes and things of that nature. So we've been gathering now 3 times a week to bring updates on the trial, as well as interview longtime supporters, the WikiLeaks Inner Circle, and activists who are getting the work done on the ground.
All right, so I think it's very important that we actually talk about Julian Assange, because I've mentioned that to the show, and so have all my numerous co-hosts. We've talked about this too, that what's happening to Julian Assange should be concerning to not only independent media networks, no matter what their political affiliation, but even to some extent, and even though they probably won't care, corporate media as well. Because if Julian Assange is being silenced, if he is being, basically buried and made the sacrificial lamb, there goes any chance for the media, for journalism, to really hold those in power accountable. So in regards to this, as you've been covering and following up with the story, what are some of your concerns about what happens to the press if, God forbid, the final hammer comes down on Julian Assange?
Well, the last veneers of a free press and of free speech go away. The precedent set would be that any publisher of any outlet, no matter where it is in the world, can be subject to another country's their form of the Espionage Act. A Chinese outlet can go after an Argentinian journalist. A Greek outlet can go after a U.S. journalist. It's open season on any journalist or publishing outlet that would dare to print documents that expose or embarrass anyone's national security state, war machine, or corporate criminals.
Right. So again, whether you're libertarian, democratic, socialist, Democrat, Republican, independent, green, whatever, if you're having a news network, or if you have any kind of network at all, what happens to Julian Assange definitely impacts your independent media, it impacts your independent platform. And we're all basically left holding the bag, and we have to walk on eggshells. So there goes holding the top 1% accountable. So in regards to this, I know there's corporate media is trying to censor any kind of information about Julian Assange. So I think for our viewers, we need to know, what is the current situation with the trial? Is there any hope of any kind of relief or kind of anything to get Julian Assange out of this mess that the United States and other world powers are putting him in?
What we found out yesterday, Kit, is that they're postponing the second phase of his extradition hearing. They haven't determined a date as to whether or not it'll be July or November, but he was scheduled to go for the second phase on May 18th. That doesn't mean that they've decided to put an ankle monitor on him and let him out of the disease-ridden, infested Belmarsh prison that he's been in for 380 days now. And let's not forget, he had been granted asylum into the Embassy of Ecuador, became an Ecuadorian citizen, and then was sold by President Lenin Moreno for a $4.2 billion IMF loan to the UK government to be trafficked over to Belmarsh. So he's in kind of a period of 23.5-hour lockdown and limbo without being able to communicate with his legal team, without being able to communicate with friends, family, loved ones, and just in this almost period of stasis, while the judge in this case, who, let's be perfectly honest, is no more than a concierge for the U.S. State Department, makes a determination on whether or not to go forward in July or November.
So I know this is probably unrelated, but and then correct me if I'm wrong on this story, but it wasn't too long ago where Julian Assange was in confined quarters where he was basically in solitary confinement, and you had the prisoners of Belmarsh basically do a hunger strike just to get him out of there. And when you have some of the when you have certified bad guys, murderers or rapists or real diehard criminals, acknowledging like, hey, this guy shouldn't be in solitary confinement doing a hunger strike, it should tell you, hey, who are the real bad guys and who are the real good guys, especially in Belmarsh.
No, you're absolutely right. And they got him off of solitary for about 3 days. And there was a little bit of fanfare and a handful of stories were done about it, but immediately he went right back into 23-hour-a-day lockdown. And this is the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom. That's what they refer to Belmarsh as, simply because they house so many terror suspects. So here's a nonviolent man who has just ran a publishing outlet, who has no history of violence in his career whatsoever, being put in the same prison as terrorist suspects, as rapists, as murderers, and for the crime of disclosing facts that embarrass the government.
We live in an upside down world where the prisoners are the good guys and, well, I guess law enforcement's the bad guys. So I think I want to do a quick follow-up. So this trial has been postponed. Has there been any comment? Because I'm seeing in a live stream chat too, like someone was mentioning about Australia not raising much of concern since Julian Assange is from Australia. Has there been any kind of talk from Australia to get their citizen back home or give them any kind of protections?
There's a couple of different members of the Australian Parliament who are trying to organize and go visit him. I can't remember I think it's Andrew Wilkie, who himself is a whistleblower and a member of Parliament, has tried to go and visit Julian a couple of times, but it's few and far between. And their current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is about as helpful as I'm trying to use a broken stick for a tire iron. It really is. He's just not extra miling the way that you would think anyone in charge of a very large country with a high-profile political prisoner would be. But this goes back into the Five Eyes network of global intelligence sharing. The Five Eyes, of course, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. So they're basically acting as a homogenous group in terms of how Julian Assange is being prosecuted. We've had the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention make several statements to the fact. The UN Rapporteur on Torture, Nils Melzer, has really tried to hammer home the point that this man is being psychologically tortured and needs to be released. And once you get to a certain level of parliament or government, the ears start to get filled with concrete. Okay,
so again, horrible situation that Julian Assange is in. So what is his legal team trying to do to at least get him some kind of, relief, respite from being in prison for so long? Has there been any kind of, activists on the ground there just at least trying to do something so that at least Julian Assange can at least speak for himself? Because it wasn't too long ago where he did ask the ability to, confine and speak to his lawyers, but that was denied to him. What's being done so he can actually communicate effectively, not only in the court, but to his legal team as well?
You know what? Ultimately, that's up to the magistrate. We've organized a number of marches. Now that we're in lockdown, we've organized a number of virtual marches. They've been taking place on Saturdays throughout the month of April. Just trying to proliferate the information and get it out there. Dr. Lissa Johnson with Doctors for Assange has been really trying to hammer home this from a medical standpoint. But again, this is ultimately a decision that's made by the court. The overseeing magistrate, a woman named Lady Arbuthnot, both her husband and her son are mentioned over 35 times in different WikiLeaks drops. She is yet to step down or recuse herself for a conflict of interest. The current judge in his case, Vanessa Brayster, again, little more than a concierge for the U.S. State Department. There was a case management hearing back in March where 5 members of the U.S. State Department walked into the courtroom. The UK prosecutor went to the back, had a huddle with these guys, came forward and delivered a message to smiles and obsequience from this judge. Whereas when she talks to Julian's legal team or addresses Julian himself, it is sneering and disdain. There is a crystal clear difference between how the prosecution and how the defense are treated.
Oh my God. All right. So in regards to getting his words out to the press, because I'm pretty sure every move that he's doing is being watched. I mean, we've seen reports of him when he was asked to testify where he literally is forgetting the day, what time it is, where he's at, or how old he is. He couldn't even remember where he was born at one point because his isolation has really impacted him mentally and physically. Is there any way that he's able to at least get his word out there to the people and let them know, like, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's going on? I mean, how can we help really get his word out there? Because he did us all a favor in just showing how corrupt our entire system is here.
Well, no, I couldn't agree more. So he will occasionally be allowed a phone call. And the most recent one was to a longtime friend, a gentleman named Vaughn Smith, that immediately went to various social media platforms. I believe he did a couple of different interviews about it. And that was just him basically letting people know what the conditions were like inside Belmarsh, and that in a way that is very typically Julian Assange, he was expressing more concern about all of us out here than himself inside. He wanted us to be able to keep fighting, to keep making a stand for press freedom in general, because he has long said, they're not coming for me. They're coming for you through me. And he knows that he is ostensibly just being held up as the example for future journalists, for future outlets that would dare become public disclosure outlets, which, by the way, are now considered to be terrorist groups under the 2020 NDAA. Hacktivists, leaktivists, and public disclosure outlets, now right there with al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, and ISIS in the eyes of the U.S. government. He has said multiple times, please don't let me become this example, but be forewarned that that's what I am. This is much, much bigger than the man Julian Assange. This is about press freedom as it exists.
Yeah. And that even applies to corporate media, even though they probably might think they're above it, but they now have to be so careful in how they basically tell stories now. Because let's remember, it wasn't too long ago, maybe 2 days ago, where CNN deleted that interview or that show for Larry King in 1993 on August 11th, where Tara Reid's mother called in basically saying that, hey, look, this person I know has been assaulted by somebody. Where can she go? And CNN deleted it. And so the thing is, CNN, at being a corporation, has to be careful what it does. Same thing for Fox, but this also impacts independent media too. And I want to switch things up just a little bit, because I want to help you promote this major event that's happening for you and some of your members in your group, World Press Freedom Day, which is going to be on Sunday, May 3rd. For our viewers and subscribers, can you at least tell us what exactly is going on? You were kind of giving us some hints when we were doing, our pre-show preparedness.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So all around the globe, through an organization called Candles for Assange, which has put on international events for almost a year now, we're going to be hosting various panels worldwide in support of, obviously, Julian Assange, but for the proliferation of free and open source information as well. And we will, Action for Assange, my organization, will be hosting a panel discussion between just some incredible people. Kevin Gistola from Shadowproof Media, who was actually on the ground in London with our co-host Taylor Hudak during the first week of Julian's extradition hearing. Cynthia McKinney, who should be a hero in everyone's eyes by this point. Let's see, Elizabeth Voss from Consortium News, and Ray McGovern from Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, longtime CIA analyst who has come to see his career in the CIA as not necessarily a good thing, and has worked with John Kiriakou and Bill Binney and throughout this organization to put out accurate information that combats the narratives from our intelligence community.
All right. Well, this is fantastic to hear, and I'm glad to see that there's a big coalition that's right now building up to protect independent press and independent freedom, so that we can get the word out there, not only about what's happening with Julian Assange, but protecting other whistleblowers. And I think for our viewers, since you've been reporting this on the story for so long and holding many vigils and collaborating with other independent media networks, what are some of your concerns, I think, going forward if this trial is allowed to continue on? Do you see any kind of light at the tunnel, at least to help out Julian Assange, since you've been covering on this for so long?
I look, it's the job of an activist to maintain some sort of center of hope,
Okay.
So even though I'm by nature kind of a cynical guy, I am hopeful about moving forward, because right up until the moment we were all locked down, we started to see a lot of movement on this. And we had, I mentioned Doctors for Assange. There was the International Barristers Lawyers movement that came up. Journalist groups started coming forward. Over 1,100 journalists signed an open letter in support of Julian Assange internationally. The problem, though, Kit, is almost always self-censorship. Mm-hmm. And the way that we have decided to monetize thought here on these platforms, especially through a platform like YouTube, where we're all subject to almost arbitrary censorship. So what you'll find, or what I've found from personal experience, is content creators who over the last 18 months have kind of walked back their position of support about Julian Assange, because we were in the middle of a political horse race. And a lot of those shows existed only to cover the political horse race. And there was there was a total blackout and a do not speak about this mandate from the Bernie Sanders campaign. Like, do not talk about Julian Assange. You can't talk about Julian Assange. None of his surrogates could go on TV and talk about Julian Assange, or come on independent media and talk about Julian Assange. So now that that's over, I'm hoping that some of the self-censorship is going to go away, but that has been a real and constant problem throughout our particular sandbox.
And again, it's kind of depressing to hear that there's a do not talk about Julian Assange, and we have talked about it, but it's quite clear that YouTube, Twitter, and other forms of social media are just kind of hide the algorithm or any kind of notice for Julian Assange, trying to bury it. And I think it's important that people need to be basically share this out with the people. And we need to talk about this, because what happens with Julian Assange, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, it will impact you. And there goes any kind of independent media network that you follow, be it libertarian or conservative, socialist or liberal, any kind of point of view. I mean, everyone's at risk, and we're all on the chopping block. And Julian Assange becomes that symbol where there goes freedom of speech, there goes whistleblowers, there goes people who want to call out those in power accountable. So I think it's important for our viewers and subscribers, and so they can follow up with this. And I urge all of you we need to continue following up with what's happening with Julian Assange. Where can our viewers and subscribers learn more about you guys, find you online on social media? Can you please give us some links where we can go?
Absolutely. If you're on Twitter, you can go to action_4 Assange. You can follow me on Twitter at Slow News Day Show. We're both of our channels are on YouTube. We're also on the Rockfin. We're all, Unity for J has been kind enough to lend us their streaming platforms as well as we go through these vigils. And we do have a website, action4assange.com.
Right.
That doesn't have a number in it, that has the letter in it. I meant to give you that earlier and I forgot. But yeah, basically the Twitter account, action_4 Assange, is home to all of the rest of our media. It will have a daily count of how many days until the extradition hearing, how many days total Julian Assange is spent in isolation, which is near 3,500 now. Mm-hmm. And it will also remind you that Chelsea Manning is in fact free and has been free for almost 50 days. So that's one of the bright spots of all of this. The 10-year-long WikiLeaks grand jury got shut down. The result of that was Chelsea Manning's freedom and Jeremy Hammond going back to Oklahoma minimum security to finish out his sentence.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for being on our show. We really do appreciate it. And I think it's important that we talk about Julian Assange because what happens to him can impact not only your network, Hardlens Media, Nico House, Jimmy Dore, all of us. We're all impacted by this, and we have to step up to fight for a better future because Julian Assange is all of us, and no person should go through what he went through, where he's basically being tortured by numerous governments across the world. I mean, this is inhumane. And when you have prisoners doing hunger strikes, you know, it must, again, I got to repeat myself, but calls into question, who are the bad guys and who are the good guys? And if the prisoners, the real bad guys, can see that Julian Assange, a nonviolent individual, is being tortured, it should raise some alarms. So let's all share this information now. I hope some of our viewers and subscribers do follow you. And I would like to have a follow-up interview in case there's any kind of new updates. And again, all the best to you for World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd. I'll be checking it out too. So with that being said, I want to thank my co-hosts, Daniel Lupker, Jerome Ortega, Jose Requena. I want to give a shout out to Kira McCown, as well as Kate, who have been moderating the live stream chat. Our viewers really seem to enjoy you and hear you out. I want to thank our Patreon supporters who've been helping us out too. Peace to you guys, and let us all do what we can to build a better future.